Looks like it's done setting up to live stream.
Mm.
All right. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen, make sure I've got the right screen up. Let's see. Looks like it might be loading. Is it showing the full screen
Yeah.
yet? On mine, it doesn't look
No,
like
just it's showing you everything in
the
your
PowerPoint view.
the power it's not the PowerPoint, it's not slide view.
Huh, why is that doing that? Let me just see if I can.
It doesn't look like just it's showing you everything in your PowerPoint view.
Oh,
Yeah,
here, let's try that.
not slide view. Oh, there you go. We're
Okay,
up.
perfect. All right. Okay, so thank you everybody who's joined in our local community and from social media, different platforms. This is week 3 of our Intro to Diabetes course. Just briefly on a little bit about myself. I am a mother and wife and love family and friends generally. That is my husband, who's also a family medicine doc, passionate about metabolic health, and my son, who is almost 17 months old now. I'm board certified in family and obesity medicine. I'm a metabolic health practitioner. I'm a Menopause Society certified practitioner. I serve on the board of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. And my goal is really to help as many people as possibly age successfully, like my granny did, which she did through her lifestyle. We've already talked about what diabetes is, why it matters, the cost and impact it has on people's lives as well as society as a whole. And this week, we're really going to talk about our medications, the primary answer, which we will, by the end of this, hopefully everyone will agree that is not the only answer. And then next week, we'll really dive more into the lifestyle changes to make. Without further ado, let's get started. So first, we're going to look at the conventional perspective of type 2 diabetes, how it's treated. Then we're going to branch off into hidden sugars. Reading nutrition labels is really helpful if you are working on controlling your blood sugars. Then we're going to look at some of the most commonly used medications for type 2 diabetes, and then kind of contrast the mindset between being more medication focused versus lifestyle focused. I always, each week, want people to take away that you can actually catch insulin resistance years before diabetes develops. And as a medical profession, we are really missing the chance to catch insulin resistance early and try to prevent diabetes from developing, because it is much easier to catch or to reverse earlier on in the disease process than much later on. Medications will not reverse diabetes, although sometimes they can be helpful to. It does not have to be chronic and progressive, which I'll ask at some point later, but I'm sure many people have heard it described that way. And again, diabetes is either reversible or at least you can really improve it with lifestyle changes. And I always like to start with just some positive victories from people we have worked with who have had serious improvements in their A1C without medications, just through lifestyle, and oftentimes while actually pulling back on medications. So just looking at that first one, an A1C of 14.8 down to 7.4, you're looking at average blood sugars well over 300s there, down to average blood sugars in the mid 150s. All right. So who has been told that diabetes is chronic and progressive, or that you may need medications for life? If you have, please put up your hand or raise. Yep, thank you. Yeah, seeing a lot of hands raised. Yeah, I mean, this is what I was taught. So this is actually from the American Diabetes Association website. And they say you might start managing your diabetes with diet and exercise alone, but over time, you will have to progress to medication. And further down the line, you might need to take a combination of medications, including insulin. They go on to say that diabetes is considered a progressive condition. This is why the first step you take to manage your diabetes will not stay effective long term. My response to that is maybe you're suggesting the wrong first step. If you follow the standard dietary recommendations and dietary recipes from the American Diabetes Association that we're going to look at, then maybe your diabetes will almost certainly progress, actually. So let's look at these dietary recommendations. This is from their website. They're recommending some berry almond oatmeal for breakfast. Last week, I showed how when your blood sugar is around 80 milligrams per deciliter, that is the equivalent of having only 1 teaspoon of sugar in your blood. And we also learned how about 4 grams of carbohydrates can impact your body like 1 teaspoon of sugar. This formula is not perfect and is slightly different, really, depending on the type of food, but it is really helpful in making food choices and trying to predict how much your body is going to respond to what you're eating. So, looking at this oatmeal and knowing that I just said 4 grams of carbohydrates can impact your body like 1 teaspoon of sugar, how many teaspoons of sugar are in 1 cup of this berry almond oatmeal? You could throw it in the Q&A or just think to yourself. And the answer is roughly in 1 serving, you're going to get 8 teaspoons of sugar. But it's actually worse than that because I used to eat 2 cups of oatmeal for breakfast. So then I was getting closer to 16 teaspoons of sugar. Now, who thinks if you eat 16 teaspoons of sugar for breakfast every day that your diabetes might be progressive? Give me some more hands if that makes sense, that diabetes would be progressive in that situation. Yep, seeing several hands go up. Now, they go on to say, well, hey, we've got Splenda in this. So if you sweeten your oatmeal with Splenda, that saves 1 teaspoon of sugar and makes this a healthy breakfast for diabetes. Obviously, that's a little bit sarcastic, and that's their advertising, and I'm sure they got paid great money to put Splenda on their oatmeal picture. Now I eat 6 eggs for breakfast instead, and that is 0 teaspoons of sugar. If you eat something like that for breakfast, then odds are your blood sugar is going to get very elevated. It's a high glycemic load. And then once your blood sugar goes up like that, especially if you're more insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, then your blood sugar, once your body releases a lot of insulin, is going to come crashing down. When your blood sugar comes crashing down from that high level like that, it is going to trigger more hunger and provoke you to eat more because the blood sugar is going to drop below its baseline. And we talked about that a little bit more in the previous weeks as well, something called reactive hypoglycemia, where your body releases these stress hormones because it feels that big drop in blood sugar to try to bring your blood sugars back up and drive you to eat food. Okay, let's look at a couple more recipes. So here we're looking at blueberry protein muffins. Sounds like a pretty good option. So here we've got 3 teaspoons of sugar per muffin. So I'm going to highlight they're saying they're protein muffins. A serving size is only a single muffin. They look pretty small to me. I'm going to eat many more than that. And we don't have time to go in depth about protein today, but ideally you want to get at least 30 grams of protein when you eat a meal to help build your muscle. That is going to help burn off more sugar and keep you feeling full longer after that meal. And so you would need to eat 6 of these blueberry muffins to get enough protein. And that there is going to be close to 18 teaspoons of sugar. And I want everyone now to think about how many muffins they would eat and multiply that by the carbohydrate count, divide that by 4 to get how many teaspoons of sugar that would be for you. All right, let's look at these double duty banana pancakes. 2 pancakes, 23 grams of carbs, and only 3 grams of sugar. So that's 3 grams of protein and 6 teaspoons of total carbohydrates per 2 pancakes. To get that 30 grams of protein, that would be 20 pancakes or 56 teaspoons of sugar. Obviously, I'm not going to be eating 20 pancakes, although probably been not that far off at some points. But this is what it would take to get your ideal protein if you had their double duty banana pancake recipe that they are recommending. The problem with these recipes is not only that they are not healthy, but they don't meet our basic nutritional needs. And in addition to the American Diabetes Association, these are the big 10 companies that profit off of you buying their food that is causing diabetes. And with that, let's talk a little bit more about what these companies do. So these companies can hide sugar in foods that they call keto or low carb. And this is where this continuous glucose monitor can be really helpful because it will help you find these hidden sugars. You can consider the CGM like a lie detector test. It knows all. It's not going to lie. And you'll find that foods that you think are low carb really cause blood sugar spikes. And a lot of this has to do with a ton of these processed fibers that are added into foods actually increase our blood sugar. Our body can absorb them. There are tons of other names for sugar we're about to look at. And then there are things that are whole foods, but then there's sauces that have a lot of sugar added to them. Very common with salad dressing. Do you think, oh, I'm getting a salad, I'm being so healthy? Little did you know the salad dressing was filled with sugar. And sugar by any other name will still spike your glucose monitor. So let's look at these names for hidden sugars. And there's actually a lot more. This is not an extensive list, but these are some of the most common things that you will see on the back of packages that, and then there's going to be a degree, varying degrees of how much they will spike your blood sugar, but they can. And when you start reading labels, you'll be shocked by the fact that these hidden sugars are everywhere. So if you can learn this list, keep it in the back of your mind. And there is a kind of sugar that may not actually increase your blood sugars as much or at all, and those are sugar alcohols. And sugar alcohols, again, they generally have less impact on blood sugar, sometimes none. Maltitol is one that can cause higher spikes. Sugar alcohols can actually be found naturally in fruits and berries, and they typically provide fewer calories, either 1/2 to 1/3 the amount of calories compared to regular sugar. The common sugar alcohols you'll see are erythritol, sorbitol, maltitol, xylitol, and those others listed there as well. Food products labeled sugar-free, including hard candies, cookies, chewing gums, soft drinks, cough drops, toothpaste, mouthwash, it goes on, often contain sugar alcohols. Now, we don't have time to look at all of the information that we have in our app on reading nutrition labels and looking at hidden sugars. But if you do have the app, you can go into articles, weight loss, nutrition labels, and we've got 4 different articles there to give you a lot more in-depth information than I can go over tonight. But I do want to take some time with you to look at nutrition labels and ingredients. And the first thing we're going to talk about is total and net carb. And when we look at a nutrition label, check the serving size. People frequently eat multiple servings. Think about the oatmeal. I almost would never eat a single cup of oatmeal back when I used to eat it. I would be eating 2 cups or more. Same thing. I'd never eat a single muffin when I had a muffin. It was at least 2. And if they're the little mini muffins, more like 4 to 6. When you have a sandwich, you're having 2 slices of bread. So that's 2 servings. So that's going to double the stated carbs. Now, this bread has 12 grams of total carb per slice and only 1 gram of net carb per slice. How did we get net carbs looking at this nutrition label? Just throw your hand up or give me a thumbs up if you know how that calculation works, and I'll go over it on the next slide. Yep, seeing a lot of hands go up. Yeah. So the net carb is the total carb minus the fiber and sugar alcohols. And the food companies have abused the principle of net carbs. And so they are able to now boast a low calculated net carb count by adding in extra fiber to bring down the net carbs. But the problem is, again, these added fibers that they're using actually respond very differently than, say, fiber you're getting from broccoli. And so even though you could get a ton of 11 grams of fiber from broccoli, your body may not have hardly any blood sugar response. But the 11 grams of added fiber from this bread might cause instead something like this. And this is exactly actually what someone had from a single slice of this low carb friendly bread. Their sugar went from 130 to 260. But they thought they were doing a really good job because they only had 1 gram of net carb. This is, again, where the continuous glucose monitor can be so helpful. So I want you to be a label detective. Food companies don't care about your health. They care about selling you more processed foods. So don't get fooled by the 1 net carb. All right, cauliflower crust. This is another really popular thing now. So let's compare these 2 crust options. This is a cauliflower crust. The front of the box says made with real cauliflower as the first ingredient, dairy and gluten-free. When you go back and look at the ingredient list, brown rice flour, cornstarch, tapioca sugar, grains, sugar, and starch. Tons of carbs, 28 grams of total carbohydrate. And sunflower oil, seed oil, commonly found in processed foods, where we've now looking at thousands of continuous glucose monitors have actually seen some people have some blood sugar responses to the seed oils. And 1/3 of this moderately sized crust contains nearly a full day allotment of carbs for someone who is eating keto. Now look at this cauliflower keto pizza crust. No hidden sugars, starches, or grains, only 3 grams of total carb. So not all cauliflower products are created equal, and many people will choose cauliflower crust because they believe them to be a better bread-like option, but they don't turn over the package, and so they get fooled, and they may choose that other crust we just looked at. And I've seen this a lot with going to restaurants and people picking cauliflower crust, and then they look at their glucose monitor an hour later, and it's spiked a ton. Okay, let's look at a couple breads now. So here we've got a 0 net carb bread. The first couple ingredients, though, we got wheat protein isolate, vital wheat gluten, oat fiber, chicory root, which are all potential grain sources with high glycemic indicators where we've seen these types of things bump people's blood sugar. And so the total carb count here is not actually that great. They are also likely to cause more blood sugar spikes, especially if someone has more insulin resistance or diabetes. Here in this bread, 11 grams of carb per slice. Compare that to regular Wonder Bread, which has 15 grams per slice. They've got the same modified wheat starch, oat fiber, soybean oil, similar to sunflower, safflower, vegetable, grapeseed, again, these highly processed vegetable oils that have been shown to increase blood sugars in some of our patients. But then here at Base Culture's bread, they have arrowroot flour, which is a gluten and grain-free powder that is used as a thickening agent, less likely to cause blood sugar fluctuations. The total carb counts in all of these breads are similar and within range to be eaten on a low-carb or ketogenic diet. But what is very different is about what they're made of. And looking at the ingredient list too, sometimes you can just see the number of ingredients and tell that it's likely a better option. That being they have less ingredients. Okay, let's look at some low-carb pancakes. Here we go, sugar-free pancake and baking mix, keto on the front of the package, 1 net carb, gluten-free, high fiber. But it's got 20 grams of total carbs coming from pea protein, sugarcane, fiber, tapioca starch. So that's probably going to be another pancake that actually does bump your sugar up. Here we've got a carb-conscious pancake mix, 4 grams of net carb without any sugar added. And again, vital wheat gluten, chickpea flour, soluble corn flour, sunflower oil, and sugarcane fiber. It's advertised to people who are trying to be low carb, eat healthier, improve their blood sugars. And here again, the total carb count is about a third of, or just a third of a cup of this mix is going to be about half of your total carbs for the day on a low carb ketogenic diet. Here again, look at just the total number of things in the ingredient list. It's much lower, and you can recognize what the actual ingredients are. The 11 grams of total carb count is a little bit less than the other two at 15 and 20 grams. And again, there's a big difference in the quality and types of ingredients when you compare the past 3 products. So to recap, professional organizations and food corporations do not care about you. It is really recommended to look at the back of every package and read the nutrition information and the list of ingredients, especially when you're first starting out. Ingredients are really as important as the carb counts, and try to stick with healthier ingredients. Sticking with healthier ingredients will enable your body to heal and give you safe ways to indulge without derailing your hunger or your blood sugar and your health goals. Okay, with that, let's talk about medications now. What do you think happens to your A1C each year when you treat your diabetes with medications? Give you a couple seconds just to think about, is the A1C going up? Is it going down? What happens if you use medicine? So on average, A1C increases by about 0.5% per year when treated with medications. This leads to more medications and eventually insulin, just like what was on the ADA's website. First-line medications are typically metformin, which has an A1C improvement by about 1%. The most common side effects are typically GI, some nausea, diarrhea, maybe some belly upset. You want to be cautious for B12 deficiency. I have seen that from metformin, and it can be really severe at times. Empagliflozin or dapagliflozin, or Jardiance Farxiga, these stops the resorption of sugar in the kidneys, so you end up peeing out more blood sugar. A1C can improve about 0.5% to 0.8%. Things you need to look out for are yeast infections. Ketoacidosis is a concern, especially if you're eating a low-carb ketogenic diet, but it is actually extremely rare, even for people who are eating a ketogenic diet. But you just need to be tracking your ketones if you are combining this medicine with that lifestyle. And then semaglutide or Ozempic, liraglutide or Victoza, these are the GLP-1 agonist medications, which they increase satiety, they decrease the liver from pushing out blood sugar when it shouldn't be, and they can actually improve A1C by over 2%. And these medicines are much more effective and can really help and be more beneficial for some people. One of the issues with them, though, is they do have a lot more side effects for some people, causing abdominal pain, constipation, nausea, vomiting. So you can see about a third of people are going to have some GI side effects that may end up making them stop the medication. You also have to worry about pancreatitis if that's been in your history. And if you have a family history or personal history of a certain type of thyroid cancer, then it's not recommended either. The last line medications are glipizide, glyburide, glimepiride, or insulin. And so the first ones, they stimulate your body to release insulin actually, can improve your A1C by about 1%. But what's dangerous about these medications is they can actually cause severe life-threatening low blood sugars. And they also can cause weight gain. Insulin is the same thing where it can cause severe life-threatening blood sugar to go too low. It can also increase hypertension, lead to leg swelling, weight gain. And so it's sometimes is required, and in that case, you really do want to use it. But if you can avoid it or get taken off of it, that is definitely the preferred route. And although the medications show that they can improve your A1C, the medications do not stop the progression of the disease and are not treating the underlying cause. So if you are using medications, but you're still eating lots of carbohydrates and processed foods, your pancreas is going to have to keep on producing larger amounts of insulin, contributing to ongoing insulin resistance and more weight gain. And this is why in that first study we saw showed that A1C will increase over the course of a year when treated with medications. It's because the lifestyle has not been addressed. It's just using a medication to treat the disease and try to cover up the blood sugars. Now, looking at insulin specifically, insulin shots cause weight gain, which worsens insulin resistance, leads to higher insulin doses. And that's because insulin is a fat-storing hormone, and it leads to eventually needing higher insulin requirements. And then it just feeds this never-ending cycle of needing more insulin, triggering more insulin resistance, weight gain, and then progression of diabetes complications. And this was a study where they actually did an intensive blood sugar control. So they had better blood sugar control in the intensive group using insulin. But you can see, even with the better blood sugar control, they had significantly more weight gain. Additionally, the higher doses of insulin are associated with higher risk of death. So you can see on that bottom graph, there's low, moderate, and high. The higher doses of insulin, a 2.8 times higher chance of dying. And I've seen people who have been on insulin for literally a decade who then say, hey, I want to change my lifestyle. I want to get off of insulin. And they're able to. They start a ketogenic diet. Maybe they start incorporating some more exercise. And even though they've been on insulin that long as their body is still producing insulin, they can actually come off of insulin. And so that is one of my favorite things to do, is stop insulin. So if you are taking insulin, highly recommend trying to find someone who is knowledgeable in this area that can help you taper off and hopefully get off of insulin. Now, just a couple of concerns with the GLP-1 medications. This isn't a reason to not use them, but it is just something to keep in the back of your mind if you are taking them. Whenever you lose weight, you are going to lose some lean mass. However, what the Bird Health study showed was that using a ketogenic diet, about 15% of the weight loss came from lean mass. On typical standard diets, it may be 20 to 25%. With some of the studies on GLP-1 medications, the lean mass loss was up to 40%. A newer study recently came out, it was close to 30%. But that's still, compared to what was found on a ketogenic diet, is clearly a big difference comparing the ketogenic diet versus the GLP-1 medicines. Again, not a reason to not use them, but if you're taking these medications, that might be an extra reason to try to think about the resistance training to try to prevent some of that lean mass loss. And I have worked with people who have been on the GLP-1 medicines and have resistance trained, and they have not seemed to have any negative uh, training issues. So they're in the gym, they're lifting just as heavy as they were prior to starting the medicine. The other thing with GLP-1 medications that studies have shown over 104 weeks study was that some of the benefits from them seem to go away with time. So the improvements in mood, the improvements for craving sweet things went back to placebo as time progressed, no difference. For the observed change over time in hunger, fullness, and difficulty resisting cravings, positive responses with semaglutide were observed initially, and then by the end of the 2 years, it was no different than a placebo. So again, medications can be really helpful, and I do use them, but the real work still needs to be done. You have to be doing the lifestyle changes at the same time as using these medicines. And if you're starting a ketogenic diet for the first time you're on diabetes medications, you often need to stop or titrate these medications on the exact same day. This is one of the reasons it's so important to be working with a provider who is knowledgeable in this area. The longer you have had diabetes, the longer it may take to stop medications, but it is possible. So don't give up just because it's been 15, 20 years. You can still decrease medication requirements. Again, must work with your provider. And the reason I'm emphasizing this so much is because there are certain medications that can drop your blood sugar too low where it can actually be life-threatening. Now, we have seen medications are not the answer. So what is the answer? It's thinking differently and living differently. And we're going to talk about thinking differently this week and get to the nuts and bolts of living differently next week. So the lifestyle mindset is an empowered mindset. Medication mindset, diabetes is chronic and progressive, I'm doomed. Lifestyle mindset, I can improve or reverse diabetes, I am empowered. Medications will help protect me from diabetes. If I take medications, my A1C will increase by 0.5% per year. I don't want to feel deprived from missing out on that food. Lifestyle mindset, I have the opportunity to be healthy. It's not that I can't have that food, I don't want that food. I'll just have a few pieces of pizza. Instead, I'll eat the toppings off the pizza. I'll try just a little of each pie at the party. No, instead, I'll bring a keto pie to the party. I can eat cake and then give myself insulin to bring my sugars into normal ranges. The cake will only taste good for a few seconds. All right, now we're going to look at how you can take control of different, very difficult situations. And I really want you to know what you're up against because this is not easy to change your lifestyle and then maintain it. Even people who have been doing it for years, it is very hard to maintain. And sometimes you go off track, you get off plan. But the key is to get back on track and find the help you need to get back on track. And there are biologic, social, personal, cultural drives to eat. And dieting is not going to change childhood memories of sentimental favorite foods like grandma's pie or my granny's mac and cheese. No food plan is going to change the way society gets together for celebratory meals. No nutritional profile is going to change traditional cultural foods. No diet is going to remove the hormonal drive to eat. And no diet is going to outlast the hyperpalatability of modern processed foods. So let's look at some strategies. Social eating is a part of our culture. It is very ingrained now at this point. So here are some tips on how to navigate some social events. There are going to be food pushers. People we love and care about, they're going to push food on us. So you want to make sure you replace what you can't restrict. Don't go in hungry. Have a safe out for yourself. Have a plan in advance. Think about why you embarked on your health journey and keep that in mind. Prepare for after the event cravings. Sometimes you're able to resist everything at the event, but then you get home and you're just kind of like, whew, I made it. And then all of a sudden the cravings continue for the next couple days. Holiday challenges. We have Thanksgiving coming up. There are really a ton of carb-heavy options around Thanksgiving, right? There are peer pressure. There's emotional eating. There's Again, celebration. People oftentimes feel isolated around the holidays, and sometimes that isolation ends up eating a lot more. There's no control of the menu sometimes because you're going over to people's houses or visiting family, friends, vacation. Some of these holiday foods are your favorite foods or really good memories from childhood. And then our schedule gets really disrupted, oftentimes very busy around the holidays. And then that's its own barrier to maintaining lifestyle changes. So make sure you plan ahead. Not having a plan is a plan to fail. Peer pressure. Get ready for it. Know what you're going to say when someone says, "Oh, just try one bite," or "Hey, I cooked this just for you." One thing you can say is, "That looks amazing. Thank you so much. I'm really thirsty right now. Could I take that home with me?" Um, the I know there's definitely concern about offending or hurting someone's feelings. And sometimes, especially if the person is someone you're close to, just give them a heads up before the party and tell them, "Hey, I'm doing this dietary change right now, so I'm not going to have your delicious XYZ that you always cook." And tell them that I love your cooking, but I'm not able to eat this food right now. Don't worry about me. I'll take care of myself. If someone asks what you want, you can tell them you're eating low carb, but just be prepared. Sometimes people will try to cook low carb and be accommodating, but then what they end up cooking is not actually low carb. Really focus on the holiday. Enjoy spending time with loved ones, and that's what it's all about anyway, not about the food at these events. And recruit support. It can be really helpful if someone else eats the way you do, and you're both kind of, maybe at Thanksgiving, you're both eating the turkey, maybe you brought a keto stuffing, and you're skipping the cranberry sauce, and you're skipping the mashed potatoes or sweet potato pie with the marshmallows on top. Recently, my husband and I, we were just meeting up with friends, and they were wanted to go to this sandwich place that was supposed to have the best Cubans. And my husband knew like that was going to be hard for me to eat, and he said, "Hey, why don't we go to this barbecue place instead?" So he was looking out for me, and I didn't have to speak up because he knew. And so again, if you have someone who can be that person for you, that can be really helpful. Low carb on a budget. So one of the concerns people will also bring up is cost, which is true, especially now groceries can be so expensive. If you can, stock up. Take advantage of monthly and seasonal sales. I forget what the meat was this past week, but I was at Costco and there was a meat that was $1.99 per pound. So you can get a ton of good, healthy meat, a lot of proteins, good fat, buying some of those cheaper cuts of meat. Buying in bulk, again, that can be really helpful. If you're going to fast food restaurants, you can actually order things a la carte, even though it's not on the menu. And very often, if you just order hamburger patties, they're less than $2 per patty. There are a lot of apps and gift cards, and on the app, we do have a lot more information on eating low carb on a budget. So I encourage you to check it out. One of our health coaches, Brian Wiley, has done a really good job getting that content together. Okay. Now, the moderation myth directly ties into our mindset. Shouldn't I be able to eat a little bit of everything? Moderation appears to be a common sense approach, but it rarely takes three factors into account: who we are as individuals, our health, and our history. It does not take into account the modern hyperpalatable processed food environments where the food companies spend billions of dollars trying to design food and actually advertise you can't have just one. They know what they're doing. They're hijacking our brains. And the extent to which our modern environment pushes food on us. You go to the gas station, you're bombarded with coupons and sales. You go check out at the grocery store, and there's all the candy bars and everything. So anywhere you go, you're basically being bombarded with food. If you're watching TV, all the commercials. It's just anywhere you look now. The other thing is moderation relies heavily on willpower just magically showing up when we are most vulnerable. Imagine you've had your toughest day at work, you get home, there's no dinner prepared, and then maybe your best friend shows up and says, "Hey, I made your favorite cake." And when you've just had this terrible day at work, you don't have dinner prepared, are you going to turn down your best friend's cake? No. So you have to have other plans or systems in place. It would be very difficult to do that. And If a food continually causes you harm, say it spikes your blood sugar, causes you discomfort or distress, your own body is giving you all the information you need about whether you should eat it. And just to comment here, the same foods affect different people differently. And so you have to know your own body, and the CGM will help you on this. Raise your hand if you and a friend or a significant other have been using a glucose monitor and you eat the same thing and your blood sugars have a varying response. I know my husband and I, we have eaten the exact same thing, and oftentimes my sugar is going up 20 points higher than his blood sugar goes. And one more thing here on just on moderation that I think it just drives the point home so well. Had a patient this past week who, for Halloween, they had said, I tried to moderate and I just had a single snack size Snicker bar. Like that's awesome. That is moderating. And their blood sugar went up over 200 points to over 350. So even though they actually did moderate, clearly bumping your blood sugar to 350 is causing harm to the body and is not a good thing. But what's great is they saw this happen with having the single Snicker bar snack size, and now they're not going to do it anymore. They saw what happened, and so they've been empowered to not make that decision in the future. So abstinence, people are going to tell you that eating low carb or keto is harmful, or you're causing eating disorders by telling people to cut out entire food categories. But abstinence from foods that cause you harm is not an eating disorder. It is self-care. Okay, finally, let's look at the 5 musts for any lifestyle plan. You need to manage hunger, manage cravings, manage feelings of deprivation, manage social situations, holidays like Thanksgiving that's coming up, vacations, manage emotions. If you feel like, man, every time I get stressed, I realize I'm going straight to the refrigerator, or every time I'm bored, I'm opening the pantry. Decision fatigue, or even happiness. These are the things when we're trying to help someone start a low carb lifestyle, we are trying to think about up front to try to figure out how we can help manage them, again, to make this sustainable. And this is all going to be very personalized. So to recap, diabetes does not have to be chronic and progressive. A1C increases by about 0.5% each year when type 2 diabetes is treated with medications. Hidden sugars are everywhere. Check the nutrition labels. And it's important to actually change your mindset to succeed. Remember, it's not that you can't have that food, it's that you don't want that food. Remember the 5 must for any lifestyle plan, because that is what's going to make it sustainable. And if you're struggling with those things, make sure you find a team that is going to be able to help you make that sustainable change. And be motivated. Again, diabetes is reversible, or it can be greatly improved with lifestyle. And so I want you to think about these 6 success stories that are representative of turnarounds that we see in our practice all the time. And it's really exciting. Last week, I actually just made a tweet about this. I had a patient who had been on diabetes medications for years and years, and we were able to stop 4 different medications within 1 month. And again, we've lived it. We understand the challenges of food addiction, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic disease firsthand. This is our wonderful team here with Tro, our awesome health coaches, Vic, Amy, Brian, and Tia. And we want to help support, educate people on how to sustain their lifestyle. And make sure you understand that you're, one, not to blame, and that it is possible to overcome your challenges. And even if you've been doing this for years and years, there are still going to be challenges and setbacks, and you just get right back on track and get help to do that. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to us. You can text or call the office, find us on social media, or go to the website. And with that, I will answer some questions. Stop the screen share here. And I really appreciate everybody who joined tonight. And let's see what questions we've got. Okay. What specifically does reversing diabetes mean? So this is a great question. It's also kind of a debated question in medicine. So for some people, reversing diabetes means you are no longer taking any medications and you have a normal A1C again. There's some people use the term remission, and in part that's because if you put your diabetes into remission, you have a normal A1C, you're not taking medicines, but you then go back to a higher carb, higher processed food diet, odds are the diabetes will return. Let's see. What else? Can you share your thoughts on microdosing GLP-1s? I tried to look into this. I really can't find a lot of research behind it. And the in the studies where they were initially coming up with the doses for GLP-1s, they got to the doses that they were using because that's where they were seeing more of the results. The higher doses having higher weight loss, higher A1C drops. I know there are people out there who are microdosing GLPs, but again, I could not find the studies to show that it was beneficial. I think, people say anecdotally they find benefit from it. If someone is aware of a study on this, I would be really interested to see it. So please send me a message on Twitter or a message to the office, and I would be really interested in reading about it. Yep, you're very welcome. Uh, Other questions? I'll give it a couple minutes just for people to think about maybe any questions, other questions they might have. Otherwise, we are next week going to be diving again into the actual lifestyle changes that can really have an impact and on disease process and reversing or improving your blood sugars and diabetes. And what is your thoughts on supplements like berberine? So there is some evidence that berberine can improve and decrease A1C a little bit, similar to metformin. The both metformin and berberine do act in part by altering the gut microbiome some. Berberine I've also seen cause people GI side effects similar to metformin. I think there's often if someone is open to medications, then I might go for metformin over berberine. If they would prefer to stick with supplements over medicines, then I think that is an option. Again, if they're struggling and they want to try something to just help their blood sugars a little bit further. I have had a couple people, again, anecdotally, who were using a continuous glucose monitor. They're taking berberine, and honestly, we don't see any difference compared to the several weeks they take berberine with their glucose monitor versus not taking it. So oftentimes, we just stop it because there doesn't seem to be any benefit. What kind of effect does walking after meals mitigate spiking? Yeah, that's a great thing. I think we will talk a little bit about that next week. So we call it a postprandial walk. So after you eat, you can also do a walk before you eat. Both of those things are going to help mitigate the blood sugar increase. And so that can be very effective. If you don't have time to walk multiple times a day, if you can walk after your biggest meal, again, that could be really helpful and help your body kind of use up some of that blood sugar of what you've just eaten. And so that is a great thing to bring up. Highly recommend it. Sometimes I'll go for a 30-minute walk in the mornings, and I always see my blood sugar start going down. That dawn phenomenon, that little increase in blood sugar in the morning time. By the end of my 30-minute walk, it's coming back down. Looking up recipes for keto pecan pie now. Wholesome Yum Food, Wholesome Yum, I think they've got a great keto pecan pie. Just exercise is not lowering my A1C thoughts. Yeah, so I don't know what your diet necessarily looks like, but there's the phrase you can't outrun a bad diet, and it is very true. I have known many people who have been marathon or half marathon runners, and their blood sugars, because they're using a lot of carbohydrates to help fuel their runs, and their blood sugars are going up and they're having prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So I really think that the diet is it's a critical piece there, even though the exercise can be very helpful. What is the biggest mistake people make in reversing type 2 diabetes? Ooh, that's a good question. I think truly the biggest mistake that would concern me is when people start a ketogenic diet themselves when they're taking medicines like insulin or sulfonylureas, where they can have those life-threatening blood sugars. Working in a hospital setting during residency, we would see times where people would come in with blood sugar in the 20s or 30s, and they're having seizures or they're in a coma now because of their low blood sugars. So that is obviously a huge tragedy. And so I think it's just not having a team or someone who can help you make some of those necessary medication titrations during the process. Yeah, you're very welcome. Um, where do you stand on statins? So I know this is a very controversial topic, but I definitely think there's a time and a place for statins. If someone has a history of a heart attack, then there is a lot of studies, a lot of research to back up that statins can provide them benefit and decrease their chance of having a second heart attack. The risk might not always, or the decreased risk may not be as great as sometimes the studies or the media make it out to be. You might see something like a 50 or 45% or a 50% reduction in chance of a heart attack, and that's the relative risk. The absolute risk is oftentimes much lower than that, but it still can be beneficial. So that for me is always a very person dependent decision. The other thing to take into consideration is about, depending on the study, maybe 15% of people will have increased insulin resistance from statins or increased risk for type 2 diabetes developing. And so I have started a few people on statins, and they've been wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and their sugar has gone up, I mean, very quickly, over 20, 30 points. And in that instance, we are stopping the statin. And if we want to use some kind of other lipid lowering therapy, then we might be going to Zetia or ezetimibe, or potentially some other kind of medication option. If I gone in eating binge, but then normalize, have I caused irreversible damage to my body? I would say no. The human body is incredibly resilient. There are people who, if you check your liver enzymes as an example, maybe your liver enzymes become elevated, your ALT and AST, and maybe they've been elevated for years, but you go on a ketogenic diet, you go low carb, start being more active. And I've seen liver enzymes go from 100, which is very elevated, down to 30 or lower in 3 months. And so that's the body repairing itself. And so it's really good at that. Same thing if people drink a lot of alcohol. Very often we see liver enzymes in very high ranges from that. The person goes sober, cuts out all alcohol, and their liver enzyme, liver function heals, normalizes. What other non-diabetic medications raise your blood sugar, and when should that concern you? Ooh, that's a good question. I will have an even better answer next week, but I have seen some of the beta blockers increase blood sugars before. Um, Hydrochlorothiazide, a blood pressure medicine, has actually been shown to increase blood sugar for some people. Um, Many of the, especially older, but the HIV medications can really increase blood sugar. Some of the antipsychotic medications, especially, are known for kind of increasing metabolic disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes risk. Um, let's see, those are probably some of the more common medications that increase risk or increase blood sugars. I mentioned statins already as one that we do see. Um, yeah, I'll take a look and see if I missed any of the other most common ones, but those are the big ones that come to mind. Why does walking decrease my blood sugar, but weight training increases my blood sugar readings? Ooh, this is a good question. So this we addressed a little bit on last week. I think it was last week, talking about glucose monitors and some of the things you'll see. But walking tends to be a more mild or moderate type of exercise or physical activity. And so when you're doing a more moderate activity like that, your blood sugar will very often stay stable or even start coming down as your body is just using it. Basically, your muscles are using up that blood sugar. When you do something more intense, maybe you're doing some weight training and you're really pushing yourself, your body is going to have an increase during that time of stress hormones. And those stress hormones are going to then drive your liver to put out blood sugar. So your muscles have that extra fuel and it can actually use it during that workout. So sometimes people will see quite big increases from more intense workouts. I had done an Orange Theory workout about a year ago, and my sugar, depending on how many sprints we were doing on the treadmill, I had seen my sugar go up 180, 190 before with that. Is monk fruit a healthy sugar substitute? Yeah, so my typical go-tos sugar substitutes would be monk fruit, allulose, or stevia, primarily. What is your take on apple cider vinegar? So, I think some people, there can be some benefit on blood sugars, and this is another fun one to actually test with your glucose monitor because you can continuously see and kind of compare eating the same thing, having a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar prior to the meal versus not, and actually see, does there seem to be a varying response? And I've worked with several people who have told me absolutely 100% it is a clear difference in my blood sugar when I'm using apple cider vinegar on a daily basis compared to when I'm not doing it. Um, let's see, someone said, for me, I have to use the mental language of I don't eat that rather than I don't want that because the don't eat that statement is true, but the don't want chocolate, not so much. The don't eat can become don't want over time, like it did with bread and pasta. That's a really good point. So I really like that. Yeah, so I don't eat that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Great questions. Any other questions? Do seed oils affect your blood sugar? So this is something that we have seen just clinically with, at this point, probably thousands of patients wearing continuous glucose monitors, that there are some people, they will have foods that contain seed oils that are otherwise no carbohydrates in them, like a meat cooked in a seed oil, and their blood sugar seems to go up some. Whereas if they cook that meat at home, they do not seem to have that same, like their blood sugar is just a flat line. So it does seem like there is something to that, especially I think the further along insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes is. Other questions? We've got just a couple minutes left here. Yeah, thank you. You're very welcome. I appreciate it. Thank everybody for spending their Tuesday night with me. All right. I'll just give it one more minute for final thoughts. Anything, Vic and Tia? Think we're
No, it
good.
was great. It was great. Thanks everybody for your participation. Great questions.
All righty, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And let's do two other things. Just a comment, deception is what you do to others, delusion is what you do to yourself. And then it looks like a question, my HOMA IR is 1.9. How long usually to bring that down? So again, this typically goes to how long you've had type 2 diabetes or how long you've had insulin resistance. I've seen literally in several months for some people, things get drastically better. And then I've seen other people where we're working on it for years. So it just depends on where you're starting from. So can be fairly quick. Alrighty. Very good. Well, thank you so much again. And I hope I see you all next Tuesday. We're going to talk more in depth about the lifestyle changes you can make. All right. Bye, Tia. Bye, Vic.
That's
Thanks.
great. Okay. Thanks. Bye.